Hello everyone. Let me take a minute here to just see if I'm coming through loud and clear. See if you can all hear me. If everything looks good, let me know. And then we will proceed with today's live stream, talking about the new official update that's about to release in a couple days on the 20th, called the Control Update for Distant Worlds 2. So if you are watching, just please type in the chat if you can hear me and see me fine, and then we'll get rolling. We're watching some of the updated Xenox here. One of the things that's featured in the control update is a faction refresh for the Xenox and the Beskara. So if you haven't seen it already, you can see some of the updated art for their stations and ships here as we look at a Xenox planet. Alright, looks like everything is looking and sounding good, so let's get this show on the road. So welcome everyone. Thanks for your interest in Distant Worlds 2. Thanks for watching the live stream about the control update. And let's start off by saying that this is the lead up to the release of the new Atuk and Wekarus faction DLC, which is going to be coming in the beginning of April. In conjunction with that, we're doing a new official update release, the first one since the first one really coming out this year. Our last one was at the end of last year. We're calling this the control update. A large part of that is because of the fact that it gives the player more control. One of the things we've tried to focus on in this update is making it easier for you as the player to handle some things without automation for those areas where you don't want to, especially with regard to ships. I'm going to be going through some of that. I'm going to be talking about the faction refresh for the Beskara and the Xenox, the two base game factions that are in here that were part of the base game. And we've done another free faction refresh for those like we did with the humans and the Mortallon previously in last year's game faction update. So let's get started. First off, I'm going to start by doing a brief review of some of the changes. And once we're done with that, then I'm going to show a little bit of Xenox and Beskara gameplay and talk about their new features. So this is mainly a preview of all that, and you might see a little bit about Atuk and Wekarus, but the bulk of the Atuk and Wekarus information will be coming out in the next live stream, which will be done by my associate producer Max, who will be reviewing the Atuk and Wekarus factions. So keep an eye out for that live stream in the next couple weeks. Alright, so first off, as usual, a bunch of crash fixes, and for those of you wondering why we always have crash fixes, first off, sometimes we break things and that creates new crashes which we have to fix. The second thing is Distant Worlds 2 is a multi-threaded, really complex game, and periodically we find corner case crashes that we haven't found before, that if you have just the right combination of things happening in the right order, that you get a crash. So I think most people who've played the game will agree that it's a very stable game, but once in a while we still do find a corner case or two. We also improved the random number generator, which you might think is a minor thing, but it's more multi-threading friendly, so we think that might also help resolve a few rare corner cases with the old one. We've made a bunch of performance improvements. We try to always improve. There are some areas we always try to improve with each update. We always try to improve performance, we try to improve the AI, we try to improve the UI. And in this one, again, we hit a few points that we were still getting reports on, where if you had a lot of ship debris, if you had a lot of ship designs, if you had a lot of research stations, there were some cases, especially relating to the UI, where it could slow down the game. So those have all been improved, and we've already seen reports from players playing the beta that for some players who were still having performance issues, that this resolved those for them. So hopefully if you are still seeing some performance issues, it will help you too. I also want to apologize in advance if you hear anything else going on. There's currently, I'm streaming from my home, and there's currently some construction going on. and I am moved out of my normal streaming spot, so there might be some occasional background noise here. All right, we added some Galaxy setup options to give you the choice of whether you want your homeworld to be start as a planet, start as a moon, to allow you to adjust the level of critical resources that are guaranteed for your homeworld system. We also made some improvements to Empire colors to help differentiate them more, and we added an option to the game editor to allow you to, if you end up with a situation where you're just looking and you're saying, I don't like the color that this Empire had picked for it on the game map, you can go into the editor and the game editor and change that. For those of you who haven't got into the game editor, you can access it right here. Alright, so first, I guess, big new feature is queued missions. So I'll just hop out here for a sec and we can take a look. For example, here we've got our First Defense Force here, which is currently heading back to our spaceport for refueling. Looks like a whole bunch of them are out of fuel. I had sent them out a little while ago on a long mission here to defeat some threats around this independent world so that I could colonize it, but that went beyond their normal fuel range, so they are creeping back, but almost back home. But one of the things that you can do, for example, here is they've got refuel at the spaceport set. I could say, after refueled spaceport, I could say then go over here and, just for sake of argument, guard this mining station. And now I've got a queued mission, okay, which I did as a manual thing. And I could say, well, and then go over here and move to this. And now I've got 2 queued missions, right? So, or I could say, clear the queued missions. And all that I did by just holding down the shift key and right-clicking to issue orders. And if you're doing that and you're doing the shift key, then it'll queue those orders one after the other and just add them to your queue, and it will perform them in order. A lot of people who play manually, and this goes back to Distant Worlds 1, found that to be very useful, especially for situations where you're doing exploration or where you want your fleet or your ships to follow a particular path. Or you want them to say, I used it, for example, on the way to this independent earlier, where I said, go over here and refuel at this mining station first, and then go over here and guard this, independent while my colony ship was on the way. So that's the type of thing that queued missions can help with. They're there for ships and fleets, and as I showed, you can also clear them. This also means that the distance measurement tool is now using the Alt key. So for example, if you want to find out, you hold down the Alt key, you want to find out the distance from here to here, or here to anywhere in game units. So M for million or K for thousands, then you can do it this way with the Alt key now. If you queue a mission, and it's the type of mission that normally would retain automatic control, it'll stay in automatic control. For example, refuel or retrofit. If it's the type of mission that would normally switch it to manual control, it will. And I think that covers the queued missions. Aldehit, you had a problem with DW2 on Proton. Actually, we have made quite a bit of, even though Distant Worlds 2 does not officially support Linux, we've made quite a bit of an effort to make sure that it was Proton friendly. And the last I saw, we've had a lot of people saying they've gotten it working on Proton just fine. I know there's a thread in the tech support subforum on Steam that's pinned there, having to do with people getting it working on Proton. So I think take a look there and see if any of the most recent posts there have hints that might be able to help you. As far as I know, the current versions of DW2 do work fine on Proton, though it may take some configuring, as with many things Linux. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the next big items. Let's queued missions. If you folks have any questions about that, please let me know. I am reading the chat as I can here. The next big thing is the 2 faction refreshes. So we have the Xenox and the Beskara. And let me pull up the Galactopedia here to give you a little look at what we did with them. So I'm currently playing as the Xenox here. And one of the themes with the Xenox has always been that they're sort of the archivists of the galaxy. They maintained more information of the ancient galaxy than most, and they always loved to gather information and sort of keep those secrets about the lore and the story and what actually happened. So a couple of things we changed about this. The Xenox also like to not be seen. So their ships and stations and such have built-in stealth now. So if we take a look, for example, at this ship here, you'll see it's got a stealth rating of 10 built right in. This is just a basic, Xenox frigate here, but it's got stealth built in now. What does stealth do? Stealth is something that decreases the effectiveness of sensors, scanners. So if you look at, for example, I've had a lot of people ask about this, so I'm just going to have a brief tangent here. If we take a look at our sensors, and this will also give you an option to show you something else here. So the Xenox, you'll notice now the main sensor tree is blocked off for them because we expanded their crystal sensors, which are their special unique sensors, which are a bit better. So they get this side branch, which actually takes a little less research, that combines short-range and long-range sensors to them just for the crystal sensors. If you look at one of these, like the extended-range crystal sensor here, you'll see it has a scan power of 150 and a scan range of 100 m. That scan power falls off pretty much linearly with the range, and the scan power is compared against stealth. Stealth effectively reduces the scan power on a one-to-one basis, and there are certain targets that you have to meet in terms of the effective power that's left to be able to identify. For example, you don't need much power to know that there's something there. So if you have any real scan power, you might be able to tell that there's something there if it's trying to detect the ship at range. But you won't be able to tell what kind of ship it is, and you won't be able to tell what empire it belongs to until you have more scan power. So stealth effectively both shortens the range at which your ship will initially be detected, but it also can greatly decrease the range at which your ship will be identified, which makes a big difference if you think about it in Distant Worlds 2 terms. One of the main purposes of sensors, because space is very big, is so that you have an idea of what's going on out there in space. And if you don't know what's going on, then you have very little time to react. So what you can see here, I've just turned on the sensors here, and you can see I've got a monitoring station here which casts a huge, sensor net going out here. This is part of why I can see things like this, pirate ship out here and such. But as you go further out, you'll see over here, I can see that there's something there, but I don't know what it is, and I don't know who it belongs to. I just know that there's something there. If something has stealth, see down here I can actually identify what this is, but if something has stealth, then it'll show up as, some kind of unknown ship, unknown empire, much further in than if it didn't have stealth. And that decreases your reaction time. So if you have your defense fleets, for example, ready to respond to an enemy's invasion fleet or an attack fleet, they'll have much less time to move to the place where that attacking fleet is detected moving towards if that attacking fleet has stealth. So that's the basic idea with stealth. If we go back here, after that little stealth tangent, we also have Ancient Star Charts. It's a new ability for the Xenox. Their exploration ships scan and survey 20% faster, which gives you a significant leg up on that early race to explore the galaxy. And their ships have 20% better jump drive accuracy at locations that aren't already, owned by the Xenox. So the way the game works, I'll briefly talk about this as well. If you look at, again, if we take a look at our ships here, so we'll look at this again. We see we get the warp bubble generator on these guys, which is a really crappy, very beginning hyperdrive. It has a jump accuracy of 4,500. That's the same units as the other things, right? So we've speed of 200k, accuracy of 4,500 would be 4.5k, right? In range of 120 m or million for each jump. That means that if I'm going to try to jump to a location, I'm not going to be able to come out closer than 4,500 to that location. There's some variability in that. Whereas if I look at this ancient abandoned ship that I repaired, has the Kaldos hyperdrive, that has a jump actually, that happens to also be 4,500 in this case. But the bottom line is for the Xenox, this is improved. So they get a jump accuracy increase of 20%, so they can come out closer to the locations that they want to be at. This is useful both for exploration and for fighting. Then they have to spend less time using their sublight engines, traveling back and forth, so it speeds some things up. And all this helps them with the early exploration. They really want to be part of the early exploration of the galaxy because they get some benefits for that now. So when a ruin is investigated, there is a choice of either 10% Empire Happiness or 10% all research for 1 year. So I'll go over here. We look at ruins. You can see I've already explored a bunch of these. And each of these, when I explored it, gave me a choice. We'll almost certainly see more of that during this playthrough, because there are a lot of ruins in the galaxy. And also, when you investigate a ruin, now the Xenox have this ability. They learn from the past, and they learn from it so well that they can sort of start to piece together what the future might be. That's what predictive history is. When a ruin is investigated, you can choose to apply some of that knowledge to try to predict the future. And that'll give you boosts to certain things, diplomacy, intelligence, stuff like that. But it'll slightly reduce your research, because part of your research effort is going to trying to draw these predictions about the future from the lessons you've gained from the past. And finally, if they establish a new colony at a location where there are ruins, they can either convert those ruins to a free new governance facility, like a planetary administration center, or they can preserve the ruin and keep it, but increase the bonus levels for that ruin. Okay. They also have subterranean cities. All their planetary facilities have increased resistance to bombardment and ground combat. And they get a special ability called Search the Archives, which you'll see here. I can't use it right now because it's been less than 5 years since I last did it, but it costs 25,000 credits. The Xenox have these ancient archives that they just start out with, and periodically they can sort of pay for an expedition, if you will, to search through these ancient archives that, they don't fully understand all of them. They may have lost access to parts of them may be damaged. The upshot is that they can periodically just search their own archives in order to gain certain advantages. And each time it could be a different advantage that you gain. So it behooves you, if you have the extra cash sitting around, to search the archives as often as you can. They get some new unique traits for their leaders, for their scientists, their ambassadors, and for their spies. They particularly like Kasati. That will give them a little boost to colony growth as long as they have enough Kasati. And then the last thing is, yes, so we do have the hive waking up. The last thing is their research tree. So as with all these faction refreshes, we expand the research tree a bit. So if we take a look up here, we can see first off that they've got expanded star beams. So those start now at tech level 1 and progress almost to the end until, as with the other racial tech trees, they merge into the final super tech that has the repeatable techs. But up until then, they're a very viable improved beam weapon. And similar to that, their normal beam weapons, which are inferior, are blocked off for them now. But they can still get, they can still choose to branch to those really high-tech beam weapons towards the end. So you can see, for example, here the updated star beams. And moving down a little bit, the other signature Xenox tech that we have here is their Megatron shield, which again now starts at tech level 1. And these are very high recharge rate shields, which are very effective right up until the end of the game. And you can see those continue all the way through to here until, again, this is the last one, and then it finally merges into the, final repeatable Meridian shield, which is the capstone tech. We have had a lot of folks request that we take these racial specific techs and also bring them out to the very end and have them be repeatable. That is something we may do in the future. It has just been a little more than we can take on right now because of the amount of change that would require for the tech tree as a whole. We also replaced the normal planetary shields for the Xenox with these Megatron shield generators, which are unique planetary shields for them. The main difference of the Megatrons versus the normal shields is they have much less penetration chance, and in fact the second level of the Megatrons has no penetration chance already versus the normal planetary shields. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with how the planetary shields work, but let me briefly explain. This is a facility you can build on your planet. And if you look at the stats here, we'll pull this up here. So what this means is that whenever someone bombards the planet, shield damage absorbed 25 damage is going to be taken right off that bombardment. Okay? So if they're bombarding with a weapon that does 25 or less damage, it'll effectively do 0 to your planet. However, there's a 5% chance that any given shot with this beginning planetary shield might actually penetrate the shield and do some damage to the planet, either to your population, your facilities, your troops, whatever. And of course, if that happens to damage the shield generator, then the shield can go down entirely. So having a shield that has no penetration chance is actually quite good, because then it's only through exceeding the damage that you can get through the shield. And there are many ways to exceed the damage. I mean, this is why we have dedicated bombardment weapons. So if we look, for example, at, let's take heavy missiles, for example, right? So a heavy missile has bombardment damage of 4 against infrastructure, military, and quality, and 2 against population. So that's nowhere near going to get through a 25 strength shield, right? But if we look at sort of dedicated bombardment weapons here, like this one has a bombardment that goes up to 20. This one already has one that goes up to 30. So this one already, for the purpose of affecting military, would be able to somewhat penetrate that early shield. And this one goes up to 40, etc. You get the idea. So that's where the dedicated bombardment weapons come into their own. There are a lot of other weapons that, have some good bombardment capability against an unshielded planet, but really struggle against planetary shields as long as those planetary shields don't have a penetration chance. So the Xenox get access to planetary shields without penetration chance earlier than everyone else. That's the main nice thing for them. And then as we keep going down here, I already touched on this earlier, but let's just scroll back to it and mention it again. We have the sensor tree. So again, the normal sensors have been replaced for the Xenox with an expansion of their crystal sensors. And if we compare them, for example here, the crystal sensors that the Xenox get for short range, 150 scan power, 3 million scan range, versus 100 scan power, 1 million scan range. And they get countermeasures plus 3% targeting plus 5%. That's a little better built in. Worth noting, something that gets overlooked sometimes are these extra bonuses that certain components get. There are exceptions to this, so I won't say this applies everywhere, but it's a good basic rule to understand, is that in Distant Worlds 2, bonuses will stack across component categories, but they won't stack within the same component category, okay? So when you look at this component, and if we take an example here, so we've got countermeasure system. That's a countermeasures component, right? So a level 1 countermeasure system gives you a plus 15% countermeasures. If you put 2 countermeasure systems on your ship, you're still going to have only plus 15% countermeasures because they're the same category. They won't stack. Again, there are some exceptions to this. Shields are a good example of where the shield strength will stack, but by and large, bonuses won't stack within the same component category. But if you have a countermeasures component, you might want to just for redundancy for damage, but normally you don't. So let's say you have a countermeasure system giving you plus 15%. You then go to something like a crystal sensor and you say, well, now I'm going to add a short-range scanner component. That's a different component category. So when this adds plus 3% more countermeasures, that's going to stack and give you 18% countermeasures instead of 15%, right? And it'll also give you plus 5% targeting, which might stack with your plus 15% targeting that you get from your target tracking system. So there is value in these extra bonuses from different categories. Just like we look here and we've got a trace scanner that gives another plus 5% targeting, and this gives a plus 5% damage increase to your weapons too. Don't overlook, when you have access to those sensor slots, don't overlook the benefit that having a good mix of sensor components from different categories, what those can give you, not just in terms of detecting ships, but in terms of boosts to targeting, countermeasures, and damage, worth keeping in mind. And that sums up the changes to the Xenox. So that's pretty much the Xenox faction refresh. I think we'll take a look at the Beskara faction refresh next. Let's take a look at the Galactopedia here first, and I'll go through the Beskara. So the Beskara are the most aggressive race in the known galaxy. And this faction refresh, they were already statted that way. They had, they were very aggressive, very reckless. They had a boost to war destruction, weapons research, and so on and so forth. all these nice benefits for being at war, and this sort of just takes that to 11. First things first, though, they are not very great shipbuilders, and they're not really focused so much on survivability. So their ships and base hulls have a penalty to damage reduction. So if you hit, say, a Beskara ship with a shot that did 22 damage after getting through shields and armor, it would now do, or did 20 damage, it would now do 22 damage against a Beskara ship. Okay, it's a small penalty, but it is a penalty. But they get a lot of stuff in exchange. So first off, when they declare a war against another faction, if they don't already have a war spawn, they get to create a war spawn. And the war spawn just gives you a very good admiral or general, okay? But in doing a war spawn, you're telling the galaxy we're definitely going to be going to war. So it's going to penalize you on the diplomatic side, but in exchange you get access to what's called a war spawning. And in order to do a war spawning, you need a colony with about 1 billion Beskara. And if you use the war spawning, about 10% of the colony's population goes away and immediately converts into 10 new infantry troop units at no cost in terms of time or funds to initially create them. You will pay maintenance once you've got them, but it's just an instant move to create more, shall we say, soldier class Beskara. That combined with a couple of other things make them very powerful in war. So we've got total war. When you're not at war, you can mobilize a colony towards war production for 2 years, giving a big boost to ship construction speed and troop recruitment rate, but it does damage to the colony. The Beskara are not very environmentally friendly. They discover an additional resource whenever they establish a new volcanic colony, because they tunnel like crazy. When you conquer another empire's homeworld for 10 years, you get a boost of 20% to empire happiness, because that very much fits in with the Beskara goals in life. And if you're not at war, one of your colonies can periodically engage in a hyper-aggressive frenzy of cannibalism. They fight each other, basically, if they don't have someone else to fight, and that can cause a loss of 10% of your population. So for the Beskara, sort of planetary damage and population damage are part of how they fuel their activities. That's a bit of a cost for them. But they also get a new core-linked weapons megalab, which gives them bonuses to weapons research and all research, but again lowers the planet quality where it's built. They have some new unique traits for leaders, spies. This is the war spawn trait, which you can see is very nice for admirals and generals. And they get a bonus, World Scorcher. They're very good at bombarding planets. So that's a plus 20% to bombardment damage. Now, as I pointed out earlier when we were talking about planetary shields and bombardment, a plus 20% boost to bombardment damage can easily help you get through planetary shields. So if you like that playstyle, if you like that hyper-aggressive, I'm going to blow everything away, conquer the galaxy playstyle, the Beskara might just be the faction for you. They still get access to their super firestorm, their firestorm torpedoes, their plasma blasters, their flux-hardened alloy armor. All those tech trees have also been expanded as necessary. And we'll take a look at those in a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit with the Xenox, and I'm going to do a bit with the Beskara a little bit later. So that's the sort of preview of them, and then we'll actually play as them for a little bit. Liberated the Stars we have non-aggression with, so sure, we will seek help from them. And we'll just watch the Hive attacking my station here. Are the sound effects too loud for you all? I can turn them down a little bit. Those sounded a bit loud here. Let's see how that goes. So we've got a Hive ship attacking here. We've got pirate ship in the area. Hives and pirates fighting. And I've got a mining station. I've got 2 mining stations here in between. And this is my cruiser here. It has now responded. We'll just watch this for a sec. So this Hive ship has a massive Hive missile battery, autocannons, impact assault blasters. I've got this is my whole defense fleet responding. I've got my ancient cruiser here with heavy railguns, which are really hard hitting. I look to already be doing some damage to it. I think this Hive destroyer might be in trouble. I've got all my star beams firing from my frigates here. It's jumping away though. Looks like it will get away. We don't have hyper deny yet, but you can see the railgun shots slamming into it. If I'm lucky, I might be able to disable the reactor or the hyperdrive before it jumps away, but unlikely. It's still got armor. Nope, it did manage to get away. Boy, that was close though. We just started doing real damage to it right before it jumped away. Alright, well that worked though in terms of the defense fleet responding in a timely way. So let's move on with the other items here. So we added a new screen to the exploration section. So we have known stars, planets, and moons here, which lets you look at everything you know about in the galaxy, and we can say all planets. You know, I can just, as with usual, when you have a list up in Distant Worlds 2, you can kind of highlight what's on the list, select it, it'll ping the location of the galaxy for you, you know, whatever you want. If you want to drill down to say, okay, I'm Xenox, so I want to know about all the ice tundra planets, right? So I can look at this one. Okay, I haven't explored that enough here. That's not suitable enough for us. This one's almost suitable enough for us. So I've got a few more to explore here. And this one looks like it's in fact, I've already got it queued for colonization. So that type of stuff can help with getting a better understanding of what you know about the galaxy. And then we've got the search. So for example, we say the JD 560 mining station, right? We just got that message here. So I say JD 560. Oh, look, there's the JD 560 mining station. Let's double click on that, and here we are. You know, so if for some reason you just want to search through everything you know about in the galaxy, you know, that is one way to do it. And we can say something else here. Thifira 5, right? So let's say a message got fastest and we want to see, well, what did we find at Thifira 5? There we go. Thifira 5, we have colony development, colony happiness bonuses, we've got Vodkal, Tideria, Satarian Fur, etc. So all that type of stuff is now available through the search. I wanted to also mention that we now have also this, the special locations one also includes these map pings now. We've always had the navigational map pings as ways to show events that are highlighted by the story. They're exploration where you don't know what's there, but the ping is given to you to encourage you to go there and take a look at it. And now these are also here. They're kept here so that you're not, you know, having to find out, you know, where they are or remember, okay, there we go, there's another one. So we just got a lost colony location revealed. And we have found, let's say we go to Monte Kudro here, we've found the Exalted Temple with an empire bonus for population growth and location bonuses for colony development and scenery. So our recent exploration has triggered a renewed fascination with Galaxy. So I'm going to go with a plus 10% all research bonus. And it's going to give me the option to apply our discoveries here to enhance our predictive history. So we can take basically half of that all research bonus off. In exchange, get boosts to diplomacy, counterespionage, espionage, and psyops. Now, I haven't met any empires yet. I do have pirates, but I'm currently got good relations with all of them. I have my... I forgot to reset these. I have these guys that I turned off automation, so I need to be setting them to counterintelligence. The main thing this would advantage me now is if I wanted to get in better with some of these pirates or I wanted to spy on the pirates. I think for now I'm not going to apply our discoveries in this case. I would apply them if I were in a situation where I was a little more focused on diplomacy or espionage, but for now I will not. But if I were to now, you know, colonize one of these worlds with ruins, then I would also get a chance to make more use of the ruins than any other faction in the game can. Alright, so we talked briefly about the exploration search, about the pings being in there now, so you can see those in your special location list and not lose track of them. And of course other things are tracked there as well. Anything that's an unusual location is tracked there. Alright, we'll talk about some UI improvements. One of the things that happened in Return of the Shakturi is we added war missions and things like that. We found some resolutions that could, you know, cause things to overlap with other elements of the UI. We've added a second bar to the top bar when needed, so that doesn't happen. We've done some cleanup on clearing icons and such in the galaxy map when needed. We've included a resource abundance sort option in the new mining locations list. So if I look here, for example, sorry, wrong screen, this one. If I look here, I now have an abundance option, which adds up all the different abundances. And if you, I assume you all know this, but abundance is basically a modifier to your mining rate. So if you have a mining rate for a mining engine of, say, 1 unit per second, 170 abundance, 170% abundance would give you 1.7 units per second, 9% abundance would give you, excuse me, 0.09. We can also go, of course, no asteroids and see, you know, where are locations of highest abundance. Actually, that's quite nice. Let me cue that too. Always can use more Aculon, you know, similar stuff. So it's just another tool to help you filter and sort those things a little bit better. And with asteroids, keep in mind it always shows you the total abundance of all asteroids that would be within the mining range of a station built on the asteroid that's in the list. So when we look at, if we look at this, this isn't saying that one asteroid has that, it's saying all the asteroids within range that add up to that. Alright, lots of little improvements. So if you're here, you know, and you're basically, you know, selecting a bunch of different troops, you can select them, deselect them, group select them, however you want. That type of stuff we applied to pretty much all parts of this stuff now. We've got, when you're looking at things in the research screen, again, I'm assuming you haven't been looking at the betas, all of you, but you'll notice we've got some dividers now on the stats here. Might be easiest to see on some weapons. Yeah, if you look here, some of these dividing lines between the bombardment damage, things like the accuracy and countermeasures, the range and fire rate, it just helps with being able to more easily see that block of data and be able to make sense of it. Little improvements, but they help. We fixed some problems with the migration and tourism flow map overlays, where they were sometimes showing the flow lines incorrectly. Mad Meenan regarding building a planet destroyer. It's an interesting idea. I mean, there are certainly consequences to using a planet destroyer. It's an interesting question of whether just building one should cause consequences. I mean, if you haven't used it, but I could certainly see others getting concerned about it. One of the things that's in the game now is that when these colossal ships like planet destroyers start appearing, other empires will get warnings that these exist. So in that sense, it will certainly notify their empires. They wouldn't get a notification of, oh my gosh, you built a cruiser. But if you build a planet destroyer, they will start getting notifications of, my gosh, a planet destroyer has been spotted here. Maybe we should have a relationship modifier to go along with that. We fixed some cases where very long lists, particularly for those who were going with a great many ship designs, could get truncated. We added more tooltips to certain sections of the Galaxy setup, start new game screens. Also, if we look here at the fleets, so you'll notice now this here has some additional, description basically explaining your fleet posture. It also, when you just hover over it, so for some people didn't have an easy time finding the set tactics button down here, now when you just hover over it, it automatically previews that for you. And you can go in here and adjust your tactics if you wish. This is part of our ongoing efforts to make learning how to use fleets and change their settings properly easier for people. There's more to do in that respect, but this is a step in that direction. We did also add these filters for fuel, construction, or luxury resources to the new mining locations list. If you just want to see luxury resources, if you just want to see places with construction resources, or if you only want to see places with fuel. Hang on. Excuse me for a sec. What just happened there? Okay. Wondering why that... Oh, I'm sorry. It's because I'd queued them. That's why they're appearing, of course. So anything you've queued will always show up regardless of the filter. I just forgot that myself. Please add a way to fix toolkits like Old World or Galaxy I'm not sure what exactly you mean, Andre Conde. Maybe you can elaborate on that for a sec. Fix what exactly about them? Let's see. And we just made it more clear when, you're looking at a colony, that the empire bonuses are, from that location. Are from that location. What do we have now? We have a large hive swarm actually suddenly coming out of deep space heading right for our planet. That's really unfortunate news. This is going to be painful. We haven't even quite gotten to Garak's hyperdrives yet, so I think we're about to get slammed by the hive while I'm talking, so I guess we'll watch that happen and see how it goes. Hopefully they won't wipe out our entire population. I guess I should make an effort to maybe build a few more things here. What can I afford? I can only afford an escort right now. Well, let's at least build an escort. I don't think I have any planetary defense facilities yet. I do not. So we can watch this hive battle happen, and then I'll continue with this. So the big hive carriers. This is the hive woke up early this game. Sometimes that can happen, and unfortunately it looks like they've decided to focus on me. So already my spaceport with my best very early game tech is nowhere near up to the level it needs to be for the hives. They've wiped out my spaceport. My fleet is fighting, but I'm under no illusions that it's going to be able to win this battle, but let's watch. It'll be entertaining nonetheless. So we have all these hive frigates. The hive is what we call a mid-game threat, but it can be woken up early. You'll find these hive ships dormant in the galaxy, and if you decide to mess with them, if some empire decides to mess with them, they can wake up. And then they'll go start hunting for food. That's what the hive really wants. They've been sleeping for a long time. They need to eat, and they need resources, so they start going around taking out bases for resources and raiding planets and consuming most of what's on those planets, and in exchange they get stronger. So if they have consumed enough, then they can create new hive ships, grow stronger, etc. It's all, bad news from the standpoint of an early empire. They've showed up about a tech level earlier than they normally would, and my flagship was destroyed, so that made my monarchy unhappy. Losing their flagship, they're probably going to be even more unhappy soon. I don't think I have enough troops here to hold them off, but we will see what happens if they choose to raid. We have hive fighters attacking us. Yeah, most likely what they'll do is they'll raid the planet, consume a large part of my population, and then move on. And we'll see if our empire survives that. To make them remain on the screen even if you are not having the mass. Oh, I see what you mean, sort of to pin them. It's sort of like what we do here, where you can open it up, but then if you click on it, you pin it. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's certainly something we can consider in the future, depending on the location. In some places it would make more sense than in others, but I'm not at all opposed to that. It's just a piece of tech we don't have right now. As I watch my fleet getting destroyed. So the hive definitely was getting jealous. It wanted to be featured, so we'll get a chance to watch the hive. I guess I'll pull up my planet, just in case we get a hive invasion, so we can watch that happen. Also, empire policy-wise, we had added a while back for AI empires something that would tell you if you were going to be automatically... Now I just have to remember where we put this. Okay, here, auto-scrap troops when cannot forward, right? And there's a similar one for ships. So that's off by default now for players, so we did have some players who didn't understand what was going on with that. And if their economies got too far in the red, they would start, the AI would start reducing, disbanding troops and scrapping ships to save the economy. People found that understandably frustrating, so we added a policy for that and turned it off by default. So AI empires will still do that. If you turn that automation on, it will also happen for your empire, but by default it will no longer happen. So, excuse me, so no more mystery troops and ships vanishing for new players. We've also added policies for ship components. This is one of the things we had added in to the base game but we never actually had added a design policy for it. So by and large, the AI didn't use these shield enhancement components, which was a disadvantage for the AI. We have now added that in. So when I say a shield enhancement component, what do I mean? Well, if we go over here to shields, you will see here the quantum capacitor. That's a shield enhancement component. So it's something that's only size 5, say, versus our normal shields are size 18. And it'll add shield strength, shield resistance, shield recharge rate. The main thing that quantum capacitors do is they help with shield resistance. So you can pump your shield resistance up. See, our normal shield resistance of a Megatron Z4 shield is 1, which means if you get hit by a shot that's, say, 5 damage, like from a fighter's weapon, 1 damage is removed from that by the shield resistance before the rest is applied to the shield. It's like the reactive armor rating. It's a flat damage reduction. Whereas quantum capacitors, if you add 1 quantum capacitor for additional 5 size on your ship, that immediately boosts the resistance of all your shields up from 1 to 3. It also had a little bit of shield strength. It also had a little bit of shield recharge rate to boost your normal shield recharge rate, but the main thing in this case with the quantum capacitor is it boosts that shield resistance, which makes those shields much less vulnerable for small weapons, the sort of chip damage that they would otherwise might get easily reduced by. So the Hive has decided that it's happy hanging out here at my home world for the time being. They have thoroughly owned me. They're looking to capture this ship. That's why they're not currently destroying it. So they're going to try to capture that one surviving ship. There's still a single mining station on the other side of the planet they haven't taken. I'll deal with this in a bit. Let me finish going through the through these changes. So planetary facilities, we adjusted terraforming facilities to take into account planet damage when considering whether suitability is below the buildable level. There was a bug previously where it wasn't considering that, and so it wouldn't allow you to build terraforming facilities on planets that otherwise would qualify just because they were damaged. That's fixed. And we added better automation and categories, which I briefly showed earlier regarding facilities and wonders of various kinds and the automation to build them. And just generally improved a lot of things with how the automation looks at and handles building facilities. Ship and fleet behavior. There are a whole lot of improvements in the control update for ship and fleet behavior to make fleets more careful, to look at threats, for ships to look at threats in an intelligent way, to review lead ships while under construction, to avoid splitting fleets up as much. There's a lot of stuff like that going on. To reduce use of dangerous locations when refueling, to adjust the defense fleet behaviors a little better when dealing with things during war, to reduce the situations where attack fleets would stop start attacking creatures during war. Some of this is sort of an endless, we do 3 steps forward, 1 step back. Some of these things are very complex in terms of the interrelations between different fleet settings and such. But we continue. I think anyone who's played the game over the last couple of years will see that the fleets continue to get smarter, the ships continue to get smarter, the issues continue to get more rare. So we're going to continue to do that, and the control update is a big step forward. So a lot of the issues you may have seen still, after all the improvements we made for Structuri, should be resolved in this update with in terms of fleet and ship behavior. And let's see. I think I should also note, for example, if I am... Well, this one's under construction. Do I have anything? I don't know what the automation's been doing while I've been talking. I'm guessing I don't have any other fleets left, so I can't demonstrate this right now. I'll demonstrate this a bit later, but as part of the control, we also added a manual, stop and refuel order as well that you can use, especially for fleets with fuel tankers, just to say, look, I really want you to stop and refuel now. You can do that. Do character stats stack, or is it just the highest value on location or battle accounts? Character stats will stack, but with diminishing returns. Though again, there are exceptions to this. But say for sake of argument that you've got 2 scientists at a location, or maybe a better example actually would be the admirals. So let's say you've got 2... this poor guy. Let's see if he can get there. let's say you have two admirals, each of which are boosting armor strength or weapon damage. They'll apply with diminishing returns. The second guy would add half. They'll take the highest bonus. The second guy will add half of the same bonus. Third guy would add a quarter of the same bonus, etc. And that will apply in general with character stacking. Now, there are exceptions to that. When we talk about scientists don't... It depends on their skill and so on, but when you see a straight-out research bonus like this, like high-tech research, that will stack fully among scientists. So if you have two scientists with high-tech research of 8%, you will get 16% high-tech research. That's because they're counting sort of like a research location too. Research bonuses simply add. They're sort of an exception to that diminishing returns rule. They add completely. So having a bunch of scientists with a bunch of research bonuses can be very useful. With other characters, they'll typically add with diminishing returns. Hi Daraphy, life is busy but okay. Thank you for asking von Schweinehund, that's a heck of a name. Is it important for scientists to be located at certain research bonus worlds? There are some character abilities that might benefit a particular location, but generally speaking, it is not critical for scientists to be located at a particular research bonus. Again, with most things in Distant Worlds 2, there can be some rare exceptions. For example, if you have a scientist with inspiring presence or demoralizing, you really want the inspiring guy to be at a location with as many other characters as you can, especially scientists. You want the demoralizing guy to be out on his own in some research station at the rim of your empire where no one else will have to work with him. But you have to sort of look at what the skills and traits are to see if there's something that would make sense for that. I think by and large it doesn't matter. Okay, ship design. We've made some improvements in this update to the upgrade design button so that it selects the best upgrade component for each existing component but retains the same component family. Previously it just went with the highest tech level component for the category, and that led to players being unhappy because it would change the component they chose too often, so it's improved. I know there's more we can do in that area, but it's certainly improved compared to what it was. We've also made further improvements to have the AI respect more the weapon and component focuses that you've chosen. There are still a few areas where there's an old part of an old system that we still haven't been able to entirely have time to remove that can interfere a bit. That's scheduled to be totally gone for the next update. And at that point, the component focuses here will be 100% authoritative in all cases. Right now, I think it's like 90%. We also changed it so that when you change your design policies, that it refreshes your designs. We've also added, if we look at the ship design side, so let's say we wanted to make, I don't know, a new frigate here. So right now when you click on here, it's going to highlight that here. If we click on here, oops, sorry, I need to, let's do this. So if I do this, wait, what have I done? I've apparently done something wrong here. There we go. So I just had the wrong thing clicked. So if I look here now, if I'm just clicking visually on the ship, it'll pull up a list of everything that can go in there right off the bat, just like it would do here. So that's a little addition, but for those who prefer to do it visually on here, you can do that now. More improvements with regard to how ship design and research work together. We've also made sure that when it comes to the bonuses and boosts that you get from either salvage or espionage or story events, that it tries to avoid projects that you've got marked as things you won't research as a faction. For example, like we were talking about here, there were cases where, in the case where you clearly have a superior choice, like the star beams, that you might find a bonus and it would be going into the constant beams, the Thuon beams, which are not your preference here. Generally speaking, if you get a bonus to beam weapons now, it's going to go as the Xenox to the star beams or up here to the point defense beams. It's not going to go into the ones that you wouldn't be researching anyway. Let's see. You know, that's a good question. Does the demoralizing trait also work on enemies? I'm honestly guessing on this. I'm not 100% sure. Off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to check, but I would guess the answer is no. Because typically, I mean, Ambassador, right? Ambassador would be the most obvious case. Because a spy, it's not like the spy would be revealing himself to the other characters. I would say certainly it would make sense for a spy, but for an ambassador, would it make sense? Interesting question. I don't think it does. I think it only affects your own characters. But I would have to double check that to be 100% sure. Alright, well the Hive, as it turns out, moved on. And it did not actually raid, so that's good. That's good. It wiped out all I had around my planet, but it didn't actually wipe out my planet, so that was fortunate. I see, they're low on fuel, so they're heading off to mine fuel before they do anything else. That's pleasant for me, relatively speaking, compared to what else they might have done. We had a lot of people talking about how the change we made to boarding combat made it too hard to successfully board because of lack of coordination sometimes between the ships in Shakturi. So we increased the time for boarding combat a bit to make that easier. I think as part of the work on the next expansion, which will be Pirates after the Atuk Workers DLC, we're going to put a lot of more effort into making sure the boarding combat and raids and such are at peak performance. But it is improved for this one. We also fixed a strange bug where Empire bonuses could be applied twice for a ship within a fleet. It's not so much that the cooldown to board will be less, but that the time before the boarding combat is resolved will be more, so that there's more time for additional boarding pods to get to the boarded ship. Because most of the issue that we saw in the saves that were given us were just that it was resolving too quickly before the other boarding pods arrived. Yes, we are hyped about Pirates. I just can't talk about Pirates to any significant degree now. I can talk a bit about Atuk and Workers, though, but I can't talk about Pirates, except to say that Pirates are next after Atuk and Workers. That's our next big expansion, which will be, I think, quite interesting for what it does for the gameplay. Not just for those of you who want to play as Pirates. I think it will also make the rest of the galaxy, for those of you who play as Empires, much more interesting. It'll make Pirates and Independence much more interesting, but I'm already saying too much. We fixed an issue with we make special forces invulnerable. This is the second time we fixed that issue. Turns out there were two causes for that. We made improvements to the enemy target list, fixed some issues with that as well. Okay, this is a big one. So one of the things that we did in this one is we decreased the effective effect of bonus funding. So you know you've got bonus funding. We can go over here actually to the economic screen. You got colony growth and research bonus funding. The cost of these hasn't changed, but previously these counted for up to 50% of your colony growth and your research. Now they only count for 25% of it. Okay? So that's an important thing to note. It won't cost, the expense will be the same, but you'll be getting half the benefit. 25% is still a big boost to colony growth and research. We just decided that the previous boost was too big, by and large. This is also part of thinking about where we want things to go in the future. There are other things, without giving too much away. In the long run for Distant Worlds 2, these will not be the only two things you can spend bonus funding on. Okay? There will be more things. Eventually there will be... I just don't want to promise anything yet because it's not set in stone, but I think it's pretty safe to say there will be more things you can spend it on. And in looking at this, we just decided it made more sense to have this be a smaller bonus for the funding. So you still have the choice to put your funds into here. It'll still give you a significant bonus, just not quite as high as it was before. We also fixed a rare issue where your cash on hand could become not a number. Not something I saw personally, but we did get some saves showing that. That's been fixed. Alright, we made some improvements. Again, some of this is follow-up to the Shakturi release. To make it easier to see in the alliance list all the wars with their alliances and empires. A bug that could sometimes not record the last diplomatic gift date, resulting in gifts being too frequent. To make sure that when you're doing a trade deal for, say, a mining station, that the value of the cargo on board is also considered in that deal. to fix a bug where under some automation settings you could tell your advisor, you could ignore an advisor's suggestion and the advisor would still do it. So those pesky advisors who got a little bit too full themselves, that's been fixed. I'm guessing the hive is attacking the pirates. Okay, they're refueling at this location. I think the pirate is on the other side of the system over here. Those pirates are sweating right now. And we added the totals. So if we're talking about, for sake of argument, let me talk to these guys. If you're negotiating a deal, this is just basic stuff. But again, the UI improvements, we make them as we can go through. So if you're looking here, I want to give you structured research and all this. It's going to give you your running total here, which just becomes a little bit easier to compare what you're asking for here, 119 versus 110. Let me throw this in. Let me sweeten the pot. Now we're at the point where you might accept it. So that just makes it a little bit easier to see the total value of your offer. Colonization and outposts, we fixed a few more corner cases that could result in colony ships doing stupid things or getting stuck. We made the AI smarter about deciding what outposts it should colonize, so that it will only really do that now if it thinks that there's a real benefit to the outpost, either a significant empire bonus or a significant resource that it really, really wants, which should result in fewer expensive and relatively useless outposts. Just continuing to improve that new feature from the Structuri. We fixed a bug where sometimes certain independent colonies wouldn't show up in the new colonies list. That's been fixed. Okay, here's another big one. So docking. One of the things that we were aware of but had not had time to address was the docking bays were not actually all that useful. So if we look over here, you've got your basic docking bay, which is a size 50 component. And you can see that it's got, let's go look at the basic one here. So it's got a throughput of 500, effectively, units per second, okay, of how much it can load and unload. If we look at the other alternative, if you're putting it on a station to a docking bay, would be a construction yard, right? A construction yard has one docking bay with a throughput of 100 per second. Okay, but it also is a construction yard that can construct and repair ships. The docking bay doesn't build or repair anything, excuse me, but it has, oops, I just scrolled past it, but it has two docking bays with a throughput of 500 per second. So it can load or unload two ships at a time at 500 units per second each, versus one at 100 per second each. But in effect, this wasn't really working as it should have. And one of the reasons why it wasn't working as it should have is, if I go over here, I can't afford to build a spaceport yet, but let me just pull up a spaceport design. Okay, go over to this one. So if I go over to the spaceport like this, right, if we look at this design here, it's just got a construction yard. But there's a second limiting factor, which is that it's got these hangar bays, and if the ship can't actually fit in the spaceport, it will dock outside. And then you'll see these little drones fly in and out from the spaceport, or even from the planet, you know, to load or unload the ship, or repair it, or what have you. And previously, there wasn't really a penalty for that, so having to go through the docking situation like this ship is going through, you have to actually fly into the spaceport, and then you would do your, loading or unloading at the rate of the docking bay or the construction yard, and then you'd go back out. The time needed for that made it more advantageous to have the drones outside. Well, we've vastly reduced the ability of the drones to load or unload you quickly, or just process things quickly. So now it's actually an advantage to be able to dock, and that makes docking bays more meaningful, which is overall a good thing. Not saying you need to use them, but you will see, especially if you have busy spaceports, that if you throw a docking bay on there, things will happen more quickly. About policies, some dudes at Discord reported some issues with automation. I saw one report there the other day that talked about a possible issue with On first load, policy settings not being respected. We are looking into that. I'm not aware of that. I haven't seen that myself, but we're investigating. Okay. And keep in mind, it's the bigger ships that typically can't fit in the spaceport. The smaller ships typically can, and they'll benefit most from the increased throughput from a construction yard or a docking bay. Let's see now. We made some more improvements to characters to lessen some of the ridiculous instance of drunkenness among admirals and generals further. So less drinking now in the control update. To make some more improvements again with spies, remembering the details of the last mission to make reassignment again one click, again fitting in with the theme of making it a little bit easier to manage things yourself. We reduce the amount of total characters as the empire grows larger, but we give you a little bit more of more headroom at the beginning in exchange. And we added some new sort options to the spy screen. So we have here the ability to sort spies by highest counter-espionage, espionage, sabotage, etc. So when you're managing your own, espionage ring here, so for example here, I've got this guy who's good at espionage. Let's go ahead and have him do something. Which pirate faction am I least happy with? The Evil Dagger, the Clan of Superiority. So let's try those guys, and we'll have him go do something against them. Let's start with the Evil Daggers. We have here 55% as a base thing. Yeah, so we'll go for the Evil Daggers, who we like the least. And we'll have him go for some kind of benefit. What would be nice? Let's get some improved defense tactics to help us repel possible hive raids. So it's just, again, some quality of life improvements to help you manage your spies. And we made some improvements to the prisoner list filter. And we also made spies smarter about, again, what I was talking about earlier, not stealing, focusing their espionage, if automated, on things that are more useful to you based on your preferences and what's allowed and disallowed for your faction. We fixed a bug with the planetary tractor beam facility, which was too powerful because of that bug. And then we made a whole bunch of improvements to game events and story events. So there were some things that we had seen. This was part of the development of Atuk and Wekarus, where we saw certain story events not triggering the way they were supposed to, or being triggered by things that shouldn't have triggered them, and that limited the player's ability to enjoy the story to the degree we wanted. So a lot of that has been improved. We have one more fix for that among the many that are in this update that'll be in the next update. All of it's just part of improving the game event system, which is also useful from a modding perspective, but just also helps bring the stories in the galaxy to life better. We made a few more improvements to how the Shrikturi crisis unfolds, and there are more improvements for that coming as we get more saves that find, corner cases where either the Freedom Alliance or the Shrikturi Axis didn't come together as we had hoped, or not as well as we'd hoped. We don't want that crisis to be either, too hard or too easy. We're trying to get it to that Goldilocks zone of, if you have it on the default settings, it should be a challenge, it shouldn't be a pushover, it shouldn't be too overwhelming. If you set it earlier or later, then it should become much harder or significantly easier. Does this mean having mining stations is a bigger benefit? I mean, mining stations in general are a bigger benefit than mining ships, just from the standpoint that they can mine much faster and accumulate more, and then the freighters, grab it from them. Mining ships have the advantage that they are more reactive to, momentary shortages, and that, you suddenly run out of something or somebody blows up some of your key mining stations. The mining ships can then react and go mine somewhere that you might not already have a mining station to fill in those shortages. But they still take longer because they take a while to mine and they have to go in transit. That auto spy setting on exploration ships, there is a bug with that has been on our list to fix. So yes, we will be looking at that soon. That's going to be part of the pirate faction work to fix that bug and to look at what situations it should apply with as far as diplomatic stances. All right. Well, we played around with, I'm responding to the chat here, but we played around with higher fleet power for the Shakturi. We tried all kinds of different things during testing of the Shakturi expansion to see what made the most sense. And in the end, what we settled with is the best thing for adjusting Shakturi difficulty was just the arrival time. That alone was enough without having to mess with anything else. So I think in general, what we're trying to do now is to make sure that that there are no weird cases where, for whatever reason, that once the Shakturi crisis begins, that either the Shakturi Axis or the Freedom Alliance doesn't gather in a way that we would expect. Where it either forms as too weak or the Shakturi take too long, finding their beacons or what have you. We've improved a lot of things over the, we fixed a lot of issues with that during Shakturi development, but we've improved some things in this update further. I think there's more that we can improve there. It just comes down to it's a very complex galaxy, and depending on all the different things that can be in flux, there are still some cases that people can run into where, for whatever reason, it's a little harder on the Shakturi or on the Freedom Alliance than it should be. Alright, so psychic resistance was implemented as part of this, and this is something I want to briefly talk about in terms of how this affects the game. So if you've played the Shakturi expansion, you know that one of the things that brought to the table is the Shakturi are a psychic faction. So they have some special abilities that rely on this psychic... I'm sorry. You all are now going to hear some of the construction going on here. Hopefully that's not too loud. It's certainly loud for me. Hopefully it's not too bad for you all. But the Shakturi are going to be... using their psychic abilities and all these factions. One of the nice things about the Atuk and Wekarus is the Atuk are the one faction in the galaxy that is 100% psychically resistant. So if you want to not... Good grief. I'm assuming you all can hear that, and I apologize. With respect to the Atuk, the Shakturi are going to be very frustrated trying to use their psychic abilities on the Atuk. With respect to the Wekarus are not as psychically resistant as the Atuk, but they have some psychic resistance. So they will be... Both of those factions will have some unique advantages with respect to the Shakturi crisis. Alright, the game editor, one of the things that we did... Yeah, this is... I'm sorry about this. This is unfortunately just a fact of life right now in my house. I was hoping they wouldn't be doing this during the stream, but there you have it. We can change... If you get into a situation now, we're going to make more improvements on this. We made some improvements with the automatic choice of colors for factions, but we also added the ability in the game editor to change a faction's color. So if you get in a situation where you really just don't like how the colors turned out on the map, you can go into the game editor and just change them now. Dorothy, good question. There will be some factions that have psychic weakness as well, but I'm not going to talk about those just yet. That is a Took spaceport at Erik. I'm pretty sure they're now researching FTL from old destroyed hive ship. Oh, you're talking about... Yeah, the Atuk are doing construction here, right. I hope it's not the Atuk, actually. I hope that the contractors are a little better at building than the Atuk. Alright, modding. We added more improvements to localization support for modding. We're getting close to the end of the control update list. And of course we added psychic resistance as an Empire bonus. We added a new command line option to load custom font bundles for localized languages. So all that should hopefully make it a lot easier for those modders who were interested in localizing DW2 into their language, whatever language that may be, to get it to where they want it to be. I know we've seen a bunch more language mods show up since then, including Japanese and Chinese. Some of these are showing up on Steam Workshop, for those who are interested. Others have been on our forums, so we're trying to continue to support that part of modding to bring DW2 to as many languages as possible. I'm sorry we can't do that officially yet. I expect at some point in the future we will, but for now it's through community mods, but I've been really impressed with what some of these localization modders have been doing. We did fix some ship model issues, and I'll note, I showed you some of the Xenox stuff. So we talked about the fact that the Xenox have their updated models, which look much better than the original Xenox models. And they're just tootling around in their new snazzy paint jobs. The Xenox got the biggest refresh. The Biscara, though, also got some improvements. So the Biscara had some texture problems, which have all been improved. We also fixed some minor issues with Darien ships and human ships. We made a bunch of data adjustments, almost done now with the change list. Component adjustments, ship hull fixes, ship hull value changes, minor event fixes, story text fixes, spelling fixes, whole bunch of stuff like that. Some missing artifact descriptions, event fixes, especially relating to some of the Ancient Guardian events. All the previous DLCs got some fixes. The base game got some fixes. Yay, the plague has been cured. And that's an awful lot of hive sitting at this planet. So that pretty much summarizes the change list for the control update. It's a big update. It includes some cleanup from Shakturia. It includes a lot of stuff that came about as part of the development of Atuk and Wekarus. And includes a lot of updates focused on what I would call manual play improvements and manual quality of life. Oh, good luck with your plumbing renovations, Sev. I think it's fair to say that, I mean, it's already the case in the Shakturi expansion that the hive minds are the weakest against the Shakturi. The Shakturi, I don't know if you've seen it, but the Shakturi actually do have the ability, if they get strong enough, that they can take over a hive mind empire entirely, theoretically. See, you say, Mr. Exot, you say that Freedom Alliance loses every time. We have reports showing the reverse, too, so we're getting both reports. We're getting reports from some. I mean, we've got a lot of customers saying, I had a great game, but then we've also got customers saying, the Shakturi Axis was too strong, the Freedom Alliance was too weak, or the Shakturi Axis was too weak, the Freedom Alliance was too strong. What we're trying to do with these tweaks as we go is to try to find those situations where, well, why was the Shakturi Axis too weak, or why was it too strong, or same for the Freedom Alliance. And if there is an issue at the heart of that, then we've been tweaking and fixing those things to make sure that more and more often it will be a good challenge without being, a hopeless situation one way or the other. With that said, it's intended that part of the Shakturi story be dependent on what you've done ahead of time. So if you're playing with the Shakturi story on, I very much encourage you to be playing thinking from the beginning the Shakturi are coming, and I'd better prepare for that, so I'd better build some alliances before the Shakturi appear. I'd better help weaken the factions that are likely to be allied with the Shakturi, and I'd better help strengthen the factions that are likely to be part of the Freedom Alliance if you're playing that way, or if you want to join the Shakturi, then vice versa, or if you want to play non-aligned, then try to weaken everybody and make yourself strong. But think about those goals in mind, and you'll be much more likely to end up there. I know from my own testing, having played through the whole Shakturi story many times now, that what you do leading up to Shakturi arrival matters a lot. And even from the point where those first rifts open, if you jump right onto preparing for the Shakturi, it makes a big difference versus saying, I've got other priorities, I'll get to it when I can. Similarly, if you're at a war, when the Shakturi arrive and you realize, boy, I'd better get ready for it, I need to get out of this war, then make an effort to get out of the war. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. If you put yourself in a bad situation right as the Shakturi arrive, then you will pay the price, especially if they happen to come in close to your empire, which is probable. They come in towards the center of the galaxy originally, and they get spread out through a decent part of the galaxy, but it's not uncommon at all that at least one of those rifts is in your empire. And Dorothy, if you're curb stomping them as a Freedom Alliance, then it sounds like you might want to set them to arrive a little earlier. It does make a big difference. Yeah, and as you're saying, if you play with that in mind, there are also 2 dev diaries that I wrote and put up called Know Your Enemy 1 and 2. So if you take a look at our list of dev diaries, if you're having trouble against the Shakturi, I strongly recommend reading those dev diaries and seeing what information that's in there you might not have considered, and see if that can help you. Also, just post in our forums, post in our Discord. I know a lot of other players who have beaten the Shakturi who would be happy to help you. Yeah, and the smaller it's a fair point. The smaller your galaxy, the more likely you're going to have the Shakturi starting, sort of on top of you. That's just a fact of life. So keep that in mind. But we do have those entry dates, so I would advise, if you're just losing badly the Shakturi, getting frustrated by it, try setting them to start one notch later, and try again. They are definitely beatable. I know in testing, from our tester feedback and from my own experience, everybody was eventually able to beat them. It's just some people needed to set them to start a little later to get to their sweet spot for their play style or their challenge level to fit what they wanted out of the Shakturi. All right, so let's play a bit here. Let's see, what do we have for time? Have another 40 minutes or so. So we've got the Xenox here. And I showed off a little bit of what the Xenox could do in terms of the ruins. I have not yet showed off the Search the Archives, so let's do that. So you've got this button called Search the Archives. These are the ancient damaged archives that the Xenox preserved from the ancient galaxy, that some of them are still encrypted or inaccessible or whatever. And if you pay 25,000 credits, you can send your archivists in there to do another search and try to restore more of them. You never know what it's going to lead to. So, let's go ahead and try that. Alright, so in this case we got a plus 10 happiness boost. And there are several different things that can happen here. A plus 10 happiness boost is nice though, so that's definitely going to help. So we did it on Nispus, and Nispus gets the happiness boost. You can see that in terms of the ongoing events have improved our happiness. That's going to directly translate, because of our automated taxation, to effectively a tax rate boost, which is going to translate to us getting more money. So that's a nice win. We'll definitely get back the money we spent on searching the archives. Let's have a look here. We don't have any more independent colonies. Do we have any other locations? We have Yaga 4, which we could colonize. And it looks like we have colony ship that is heading that way to load colonists. We also have Kaidunia 6, which with one colonization research we could bring up to suitable. And we have Erlich and Fascu, which with two, if we do 2 research projects for colonization suitability, we could bring those up to suitable. So if we take a look here, this is what I'm talking about. Each of these adds plus 4 suitability. So you'd end up with a total of plus 8. So those plus 13s would become plus 21s, which would put them into our sweet spot. And this one would become a plus 25. These are not fantastic planets, but they're certainly livable. They would be profitable planets in the long run. So those are things we should consider. We also have this problem, though, that the Hive appeared. And I think the Hive is sort of a bit of an existential threat for us if they actually come. If you look here, the vast majority of our population is on this homeworld here. And our homeworld doesn't really have much in the way of defenses right now. If the Hive comes back and actually raids this, the vast majority of Xenox in the galaxy could get wiped out. So I think it's got to be an important goal for us to be able to defend our world against the Hive. And I think our first focus is not even the other worlds we have, but just defending our main world. So what can we do about that? We can build enough troops that we could beat any invasion, but they'll still take a pretty big toll. We can also build up our weapons. So against the Hive, point defenses are helpful, but also planetary defenses are helpful. This won't cost very much to get some additional beam weapons, then maybe get the planetary energy weapon. We could also advance up the ion tree to get planetary ion weapons, but we haven't progressed very far there. It also would only take us 2 projects to get to missile weapon defenses, which would be useful. And when we look at shields, if we research one more Megatron Z4 shield, then we can get to our reinforced planetary shields, which will certainly help as well. So all those are good. Getting some fighters to counteract their fighters would be useful, and I think maybe that's what I'll do next, because that's a pretty cheap add, and then we could also get some planetary fighter bases. We could get some destroyers and defensive bases. Countermeasures, why not? That's almost already done. In fact, let's just go ahead and move that up to the top. Same thing for targeting. Nothing wrong with those. Transport systems would help with spreading our population out among our worlds. That's not a bad idea, again, given that that has been mostly researched. If you guys have any suggestions on how we defend against the Hive, I'm going to be playing the Xenox just for a little bit longer before I switch to Pescara. Give me your suggestions and thoughts of how you would prepare for the Hive to come back to our homeworld. Yeah, I mean, if you start in a smaller galaxy, it will be tighter. You will get a lot more things resolved one way or the other before the Shakturi arrives. So again, you just need to sort of win that earlier struggle, and that's fine. I mean, it's not like 700 stars is a really small galaxy either. A lot can happen in 700 stars, but it's certainly smaller than 1500 or 2000, just relatively speaking. Our more universal text plan in the future. I remember in DW1 there was a hyperstop tech, the tech you could research after hyperdeny. Well, let's talk about that, because you actually bring up a very good point. This is an extremely important technology for fighting the Hive. If you can't stop them from jumping away, they tend to be very good at jumping away because they start out with better hyperdrives than you, and so you have a tough time, even if you beat them, actually destroying them. So getting hyperdeny here, which will prevent ships. So if ships are within the range of a hyperdeny, and their hyperdrive installation does not exceed the hyperdeny's strength, then they can't jump, which allows you to keep beating on them until you destroy them. And if you look over here, we get the gravity well generator, which will actually, you know, you can build that on a planet. This is not something that's anywhere near close to getting, but this will basically exert a massive hyperdeny range around the whole planet, preventing ships from jumping in, you know, close to the planet at all. They'll basically have to traverse a good chunk of the system to get to the planet, which again makes it very useful. Those are your two options for hyperdeny. As far as hyperstop in DW1 versus hyperdeny, I believe those are the same thing effectively in DW2. I don't think we have hyperstop as a separate bonus in DW1. I think the way it works in DW1 is just hyperdeny. So, barring other suggestions, I think the first thing I'm going to do here, actually we can really use these improved defense tactics. We'll go with starfighters, and we'll go with go get some beam weapons. I'm going to speed things up a bit here, since we're still in the relatively early game, to let our research progress. Also, just improving our research will help. So we're rebuilding the one research station that got destroyed, and we're getting research from these other research locations. And the other thing, as soon as we get enough money, is we have the ability to build a science academy, but we have not yet built one because we didn't have enough money to build one. Heavy Shakturi ships are too easy to capture, almost like cheating. Well, why don't you speak to that? Tell us why you're finding them too easy to capture. What is it that you're doing that's making them so easy to capture? Perhaps you're using a combination of technologies or particular sets of designs and tactics. Just be interested to hear how you have made it very easy to capture the Shakturi. And again, I apologize for the noise in the back here. So we've got ancient outpost, Xenox outpost here. Just colony development and scenery, but it is a ruin. Let's excavate it. It was destroyed by the Xenox themselves. It's almost suitable with a little bit of, oh gosh, it's got 31% damage. That'll be a very suitable world once it's repaired. Partially intact vault that's been left on purpose, but left careful hints that only a Xenox mind would notice. The data vault has revealed much. Once the bulk of the population was evacuated, the world then served as a hidden base to monitor the Shakturi and their allies. The greatest strategists of the Xenox technocracy concluded that they should be able to detect patterns in hive mind's behavior, since it is ultimately a singular intelligence. This outpost was dedicated not only to monitoring and recording all activity by the Shakturi Axis, but running all collected data through a series of sophisticated analytical algorithms designed to generate predictions. This is the predictive history that the Xenox still practice. So they believe themselves extremely close to being able to predict the time and location of Shakturi attacks, but it was undermined when the Shakturi began to absorb other insectoid races into their own hive minds, resulting in subtle changes and invalidated the predictive algorithms. The Xenox were working on all this, and we got an artifact out of this too. And we're going to have an interesting... we'll go back to all research for now. And we still haven't met any of their empires, and I'm not really focused on too much on the pirates. So I think I will still focus on just getting the all research bonus for now. 6 fast frigates with 2 assault pods are able to capture carrier, maybe a little more than 6. The fleet doing damage, but not many pods doing it. Well, good to hear that you've figured that out. Are you using tractor beams and hyper deny along with that, or just the frigates alone with the pods are allowing you to do that? The reality is boarding combat can be quite strong if you practice it, and it's a good way to equalize the odds a bit, because once you get access to those enemy ships, you can either have them fight for you, or you can retire them to get technology boosts. It is a very viable tactic against any opponents who say, you know what, I'm going to focus on trying to capture their ships and take them back. I will say in my experience the Shakturi have been harder than other factions to capture. Mainly because of the tech advantage, but once you've closed the tech gap with them, then they should be as easy as other factions to practice boarding against. Alright, so it looks like we can build our Science Academy now, which will help significantly with our research, because it'll give us an all-research bonus, and all research bonuses are the most valuable bonuses by far. Oh, we found an abandoned colony ship. And it has Wekarus on board, as it turns out. So we'll get to see a little bit of the Wekarus here as well, because I happen to be playing with the faction DLC. So, for example, we have Nispus 3, which is suitable for Wekarus, as is Procopea 3, which is even more suitable. I think we might actually, let's see... We might actually turn this to manual for a sec, stop it, and do that. May as well just head straight there. It'll be a slow trip without refueling, but it won't be that slow. Yeah, no, thankfully this is not a dentist. This is home renovations happening, and unfortunately I am live streaming from home. No other way around it. Alright, well, Aldehid, congratulations on that. Congratulations on pulling that off. I've been ignoring some messages here. The Hive has eliminated the pirates. They've been attacking my mining stations. And they are now heading towards Mochu, which is bad. That is one of my worlds, and it's a small world that I recently colonized. There is simply no way that I'm going to be able to defend that. The Hive will have their way with Mochu, and we'll watch that happen. Oh, look at that. We met some humans. Alright, let's talk to the humans. They're angry with us. Well, let's send an ambassador to the humans. We don't know their homeworld yet. We'll need to talk to them about that. Do we we know where they are yet? We do not yet know exactly where they are. And so poor Mochu here. Yeah, Mochu got munched. Oh, thank you for flying through the planet. It's always nice to see. So Mochu was raided, and we went from 120 million people to 31 million people, and the hive got stronger as a result. And we've met more humans. Yeah, consuming all in their path. Lovely. And we've met Mortallans. So let's see. We now know Mortallans. Let me slow this down. We now know Mortallans and 2 human empires, a human republic and a human democracy, and a Mortallan military dictatorship. So we don't yet know where exactly they are, but let's find out. Let's take our spies. So let's take our spy here. And let's find out where they are. Let's find out about the, let's see, Vicus Empire first. Territory map. That should be easy. And we'll take you off counterintelligence, and we'll have you go for the Vilmueni Confederacy. See if you can get their territory map. And we have an abandoned destroyer, and it's also advanced our knowledge of defensive bases. That's got some nice technology on it. So that's something that we have here. We have a bunch of things that we have found, including the Planet Annihilator. I was going to save this, but I got a little sidetracked. We need ion shields to be able to get in there, but we did find the ancient Mortallan planet destroyer. But we'll go ahead and queue some of these for repair. These are close enough. And I think we will also take a look at the Beskara in a bit. So there are no new races that were in DW planned for DW2. I won't promise that we won't do anybody new, but right now our plans are to do all the Distant Worlds 1 ones first. Please bring a robot race. Noted, I've seen a lot of requests for that. Can you talk about the improvements to the Teekans and Hakkonish? I cannot talk about those yet, sorry. Okay, thanks, Aldehyde. Stream starting to stutter. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know why that would be the case. Again, I'm at home, construction's going on. Hopefully nothing relating to that is messing with the internet here. But I see stuttering going on. Alright, well, if the stream continues to stutter, then we may just draw it to a close here. I'll tell you what, though. Let me save this. Let me go back out to the main menu for a sec, and we'll quick load up the Beskara. And I'll give you a little preview of something else. So, just a little preview here. You'll see that we now have the Atuk, who are here. I'll scroll down through these guys for a bit, just so you can get a brief glimpse again, and I'll remind you that in a future stream in the next 2 weeks, we will have Max, my associate producer, giving you a very full preview of the Atuk and the Weckers. But this gives you some idea of what to come, what is coming for the Atuk. And over here we have the Weckers. I'll give you a brief glimpse of that, and I'll note that there have been dev diaries released, one for the Atuk and one for the Weckers as well. That will give you an idea of what makes them special. And we hope that you will enjoy them. I think they do both play in a very interesting and different way from any other faction in the game. They're both quite unique compared to any other faction in the game. The Atuk have their great directions that determine very much what their society is like at any given time, and it changes periodically. The Weckers have their ghost ships and ghost troops and ghost characters. It's a lot different. But for today, let's take a look at the Beskara. And I mentioned earlier that they also got the redo, so let's go ahead and do briefly, we'll do the hive mind. So we will go ahead and do a Bhaskara hive mind. And let's just to move things along a little bit, let me start the galaxy a little bit stronger. So we'll do tech level 2 expanding for everyone here. And we'll let that generate. This is one of our new loading screens showing the Bhaskara ships, which I happen to like. I think their ships look pretty cool. Like I said, they also got a texture refresh. They don't look very different, but they had a lot of things cleaned up. A lot of the things that were glitches in some of their original textures or parts that weren't just as smooth as they should have been cleaned up for this Bhaskara refresh. And just while we're talking here, I'll also show you just briefly, this is a Bhaskara city, and this is the Bhaskara fleet. This is a Xenox city, and this is a Xenox fleet. So I think we've shown these as well before, but then we've got the Atuk city view and the Wekarus city view. The Atuk being native to forest planets, the Wekarus to deep ocean planets. But for the Bhaskara, this is what a Bhaskara volcanic planet might look like. Alright, but if I tab away from this, then it'll take a long time. The Atuk can certainly be strong. They have a high reproduction rate, but they are also more vulnerable to plagues. They have penalties across the board in a lot of things, but their great directions let them overcome those penalties. So I think that the Atuk really can shine if played well. And in fact, looks like we already know an Imperial Atuk dynasty here. So we're the Bhaskara Hive. And we're right here. We've encountered the Imperial Atuk dynasty. We've encountered the Human Confederation, the Wekarus dynasty, the Agdarian Ascendancy. So we know a whole bunch of things here. And it looks like, in fact, I thought so. Looks like we have a Wekarus planet in our starting system, which will need to be solved pretty quickly. So, get some Wekarus there. And that means that we got here, yeah, okay, so the Wekarus dynasty would be the first on the menu here for the Bhaskara. The Human Confederation, the Imperial Atuks over here, and then a bunch of independent worlds over here. And I think that let me just, to help myself with moving things along for the stream, we turn this on for a sec while we take a look here. So we've got our volcanic planet, which has a bunch of resources, a lot of Bhaskara on it, a lot of other developed planets since we started with an expanded tech level 2 start. It's going to take a few minutes. They've begun to, the Imperial Tukes have begun constructing the Intergalactic Welcome Center. I won't say anything more about that. I'll leave that for Max, but they are sort of a naive faction as well. And they have the Great Direction Multiply. So, again, I'm not going to talk more about that until Max's live stream. Is there anywhere we can get those images to print and stick to my computer? I think there might be full-size versions of them in the dev diaries. If not, we can certainly upload them somewhere for you. Or you can always, you know, once you've got them in the game, you can screenshot them. Will there be Slukin? Yes, Slukin are planned for the future. Right. Okay, so We've got some fleets building up here. I'm going to let that happen. And then we'll go see if we can just do something about... Let me just do this actually, since we've got some stuttering and we're just about out of time for the stream. Let me just go ahead and do this and declare war on the Wekaroos. So we'll get a little bit of that in. We've got our attack fleet moving in this direction. We've got a defense fleet currently over there. Let's make another defense fleet for our home world area, the Padires place. So let's do this. We don't have... Hang on. We do... Oh, we don't have enough resources yet. Okay. Pirates. Foolish pirates. Alright, well let's just do this so you can see. It's not the ideal setup, but let's just do this so you can see what happens here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to declare war on the Wekaroos. We declare war on you. And now we have the opportunity to get a war spawn. So we're going to assign a war spawn. We got a new general. And I'm going to take this opportunity also to select my home planet here and make use of the war spawning. So you see what we've got here for troops. Well, now we lost 10% of our population, and now we have a lot more troops ready. And we're going after the... we have got this all automated, so these guys are going to load up eventually, but we're going to have our attack fleets, I think, go after them. They're building defensive bases. All of that will unfold. And we'll go ahead and have these guys attack here. After they refuel, and we will issue them a queued order to attack this spaceport using our new manual orders. Go ahead and tell these guys to load up. Load troops over there. Speed this up a bit. Yes, I know you're set to the same system, but I would prefer that you actually land your troops if we can. And how close are you guys? Oh, you're still a ways away. Alright, well, let's see if our invasion fleet can do it on its own. Probably not. Nope. It was a poor decision by Erik. The Beskara get punished for not waging and starting wars, but their ships are weaker than other races. Yeah, they do get more weapon strength, actually. So, the Beskara get a lot of advantage, actually. If you play as the Beskara, I don't think you will have a problem being at war. I think you'll be very happy to be at war. So you'll see they get a weapon damage increase of plus 10% straight off the bat. They get a damage reduction penalty, but they get a weapon damage increase. I've simply mismanaged this particular thing here because I was trying to rush it in before the end of the stream. But one thing you'll get to briefly see here is the pulse wave cannons, except unless the area weapons blow me up first. So let's just say the Wekarus orbital defense is held strong. My hasty attack failed, but the Beskara are actually quite good at war. They really are. Just don't do it the way I did it. Take your time, build up your forces, declare war when you're ready. A lot of Distant Worlds 2 is about preparation and actually planning things out well. And I think if you do things in an intelligent way rather than in a hasty way, you can do extremely well as the Beskara in war in Distant Worlds 2. They are probably the most war-friendly faction we have. Obviously there are others that are also happy to be at war. Mortal military dictatorships, Gazurians as well, but honestly the Beskara are the pinnacle. If you want to be at war all the time and get benefits from that, play the Beskara. And yeah, let's just take a quick look at some of their race-specific stuff. So they get these plasma blasters, which are again different, slightly better versions of normal blasters, and they get those now expanded right up to the end when they merge into the final text. So those are very good, and they get them very early. They also are the only faction other than the Shakturi that gets access to the Shakturi Firestorm torpedoes, which are great at both causing damage in space and at bombardment. They still have knowledge of these left over from when they were the Shakturi's allies in the Ancient War, so that's why they get access to them. And though the Shakturi gets access to some slightly better stuff, it's still a pretty potent weapon that they get access to. So the combination means that they're very, very good at close range. If you get Beskara ships in close with you with their plasma blasters and Firestorm torpedoes, your shields and armor just melt. At least that's been my experience. And they also get access to this flux alloy armor, which is just, well, we can take a look, for example, here. You know, you can see it's got more reactive rating. So again, their ships are a little more resistant to those chip damage shots, like from fighters and such, which helps them, let's say, if they're fighting against Gazurians, you know, for sake of argument. And here's their new core-linked weapons mega lab that I was talking about. Minus 10% to planet quality, but plus 5% to all research and plus 10% to weapons research. Now, if you're the Beskara and you want your plasma blasters and you want your, you know, Shakturi Firestorm torpedoes, understand that you, as a Beskara hive mind, we have a penalty to all research, which is not good. But we get plus 15% to weapons research. As the Beskara, you built that core link weapons mega lab, then you're only minus 10% all research and you're plus 30% to weapons research. And that's even before we start adding in all the bonuses you can get from research locations and characters and such. In terms of war wariness reduction, well, if we look at it here, or the hive mind, we've got plus 20%. And so overall with the Beskara plus 50%, so right now plus 1% for leader, we're at 71% war wariness reduction, which is actually quite huge. And the fact that they also get a plus 20% happiness boost for 10 years if they take someone else's homeworld is another thing that helps them now continue wars for a very long time if they would like. So, alright, I think I'm going to have to call it here, folks, but I hope this helps preview the control update and give you an idea of the Xenox and Beskara refresh, as well as the manual play quality of life improvements and the other fixes we've made. I hope it also gets you interested for what's coming with the Atuk and Wekarus DLC, and I'll remind you all that there is a new live stream happening in about 2 weeks with my associate producer Max, who is going to be previewing the Atuk and Wekarus factions in detail. If you're looking forward to know exactly how those play and see them in action before the DLC is released, then please tune in for that. I think that will be on April 2nd, and the DLC is releasing on April 3rd, so keep your eyes on that. Hope to see you back again. Thank you for your interest and support of Distant Worlds 2. Hope you're having fun with it, and we'll keep improving it as long as you all keep playing it. So thank you, and be well. Take care.